everyone has that target number. You think about that scratch off lottery ticket that you get at the grocery store, the lottery that you go in with your pool,
Yeah.
of coworkers, and you think, man, if we hit this, my cut's going to be $5 million after taxes, and that's
Mhm.
all I need to live for the rest of my life. Well, we all should know what our number is. And doesn't mean you have to stop working. It doesn't mean that you stop growing your wealth, or you take care of others. But at the same point, you know that you're secure for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
So I encourage everyone watching to know what their number is
Yeah.
and have a goal to hit it, whether it be 5 years, 10 years, or by the time you retire. You need to get to your number. And so the faster we can get to that number, the faster you get to, enjoy the luxuries of time.
All right, so if you are thinking about lending money, but you're not sure what it's really like, today you hear the experience straight from one of my private lenders. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode in my really good educational series, right? Where I share tips, I share insights about the world of private money. So whether you are raising private money on your deals or you are looking for a safe and profitable way to lend it, I'm here sharing this journey with you. And sometimes it's always good to hear from another investor who's actually funded one of my deals, right? Because I can share all the good things about private money, but it's also good to hear from someone who actually have the capital and have invested it. So that way you get the lender's perspective, their concerns, their wins, and why they decided to invest. So let's jump into it. You're going to love this conversation with one of my private lenders, and I want to welcome Bradley to the conversation. Brad, what's going on?
Hey, Felicia, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I love this. I'm super excited to share everything that we're going to talk about. And guys, like these, Brad has no idea the questions that I'm going to ask him. I mean, we've chat before many times, but I did not share with him the conversation, the questions at all. So we're literally going to freestyle this and have an open, big conversation so you guys can see that this is real, authentic, and all that stuff. So,
That's my
my
favorite
first, go ahead.
conversation.
Huh?
This is my favorite type of conversation.
Listen, it's always good to, I think it's good to hear from the perspective of someone who's doing it, because I can tell how good it is working with you and all the good stuff about it. And as much as I like to share about the bad stuff too, it's always good to hear from the perspective of someone else,
Absolutely.
so to make it easier. So with that being said, Brad, can you share a little bit of about your background?
Yeah. My job today, I work in a corporate setting
Mhm.
where I help lead a national sales team for corporate software sales. And I had no idea what I was getting involved with when I met Kalisha. And so it's been a nothing but fantastic experience working with her, but also learning this industry and learning what type of investment mechanisms are out there.
Mhm.
So just like everyone is trying to grow their own personal wealth and you're living your own personal track in your own life, there's ways to make money passively, and there's ways to also, get engaged in multiple areas and learn something new.
Yeah.
And so you're always on this journey of learning. And so, growing up, I was, I thought you had to work really hard for everything that you need to earn. And I do work very hard and I give my 100% to everything that I'm involved in. But there's other ways that you can work smarter and not always harder. And Kalisha's opened that path for me. And so I really appreciate the friendship that we've developed over these years.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And the crazy thing, guys, like I haven't known, we're recording this. It is it is August 28th. And I've known Brad for less than a year. So at the end of this conversation, you're going to be like, wait, I don't believe that. You guys have done so much stuff in less than a year, but you will see. So you got to keep watching to hear all the details. So before we met, Brad, like, did you know anything about private lending? I know you did a little bit of passive investing and stuff like that, but what I was doing, like, have you heard about that before? Social media, anyone else?
The only thing I was ever exposed to was I understood that you could do fix and flips as a private person doing those type of activities, but I
Mhm.
never realized the other side of the money. I always thought that this was a big corporate investment type thing where if you needed money, you had to go to a large bank or a large organization, or private funders that had millions of dollars in huge portfolios. I didn't realize someone at my level could start to invest and do these type of things to help out other, young entrepreneurs in the market to make a difference.
And then when you started learning about this, was there like any concerns or red flags? Because I know a lot of people always think about, oh, money, this is scam, fraud, stay away. Like, what were some of your concerns or red flags?
I thought, okay, when I first met Kalisha, I knew you had this, great personality and you're a very outgoing individual and had lots of contacts. And I thought it was a little daunting to be like, well, how does she get all of this contacts and the networking? So there's the people aspect of it, but then also I thought, well, is this too good to be true? Is this really something that's legal? Or I'm always a rule follower. When it comes to the important things in life, there are shades of gray of certain rules that are meant to be broken. But when it comes to finance, I was very straight and narrow, saying, how is this even legal? Is this even possible? Is this just a too good to be true story? Because a lot of times in my past, to be honest, anything that I thought was too good to be true usually ends up that way. But as we started to explore and as I started to ask questions and understand more, that we'll get into some of these topics, those guard walls came down, and I took that leap of faith on that first deal, and then, the rest is history. So I'm not jumping too far ahead, but we'll get.
No, but it's crazy because it's a lot of people will automatically assume things are a scam or fraud. But what sets you apart from a lot of investors is that that was something that interested you. And before you shut it down completely, you're like, let me go do more research first so you can make a decision if this is something that you want to proceed with, or just let's write it off, be like, I'm not interested. So a lot of people would just shut it down. So you mentioned your first deal. So walk us through your first lending deal. Talk about like, what were you scared of? What made you even decide to lend on that first deal?
Yeah, I think it was the first piece of this was is we've done many deals together in this year. It was the deal size amount, firstly.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm looking for I'm always looking for opportunities. I've got an idea a minute. My family and friends say, "Oh, what's your get rich quick scheme for this month?" Right? And what thing are you going to go invent to change the world? This month. And
Yeah.
of course, ideas come and go, but without action, you don't retrieve anything from that. There's no ROI on that idea. And so when this came forward, I thought, hey, this is something I can actually do. And I've lost money in the past. If we look at it from a risk tolerance perspective, I've had other things that I've had stupider ideas that I've put money into that have not panned out, right? And so when I look at my portfolio, and it was a low barrier to entry, on this first deal, it was the right deal size. And I thought, I'm willing to risk this capital to see what happens with this process. Only after I found out, answers to my questions and things like that. So when I met Kalisha, we were at a young business small group gathering, and hearing multiple people and what their jobs are. I felt like I didn't fit in. I was this guy that works a corporate job. I have a lot of responsibilities. I travel the nation and do these type of things. Where these were all people in my local area, own small businesses and some franchises and things like that. And I thought, I don't really connect here, until I heard Kalisha speak and about how this is not location based or time based or anything like that. And it's the things that you've built and the education that you've learned, you're able to connect us investors to that knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and be able to start taking us on this journey. And so, again, it's a big financial commitment. When you look at that, I mean, even though it is diversifying your portfolio and it was in the right deal size to get started, there's still that anxiety or that angst when you press the send button on that wire at the bank. But
Yes.
that was the hardest thing, right? Once that money's gone. But you have to view it as, I'm investing this, putting that out there, and if I don't receive it back, I'll be okay to live without it.
Yeah.
But there would be pain if I were to lose that investment.
Mm-hmm.
But I had all of the risk points covered from an exit strategy.
Yeah.
From what's the deal structure here? What are our options if things go left, right, or sideways? And so those were the answers that I needed to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if you have a significant other in your life, they're a very important piece of this too. And
Yeah.
luckily, I've been married for many years, or about 16 years coming up here. And my wife, is very supportive and said, hey, if this is something and she trusts my judgment to review the risks, but I would just lay that out as a caveat is you always want to make sure both parties are on board because nothing causes more problems. So if you an argument with you or your family or your friends or whoever's involved with you in your financial decision making, and then you go into this, if you have stress on top of risk, that just magnifies things. So being at peace, being calm, having your questions answered, and having the confidence is key for success in this.
So even that with doing the first deal, I want to back up a little bit because I'm picking up that you may sound like a high risk taker. Like, where did that come from? And secondly, like, what was that? What's your why for investing? Like, what's your end goal? Why did you think this would be a good fit for you?
I am typically risk adverse, actually. So I am very, I used to think that investing was hiring a brokerage firm, which I do have for my 401ks and, job related things like that, someone to help me manage my portfolio because I know that I am not well educated in stocks and mutual portfolios and all that kind of stuff. And so I know that I need help in that area. And I've offloaded a lot of that. However, I did not think that I could manage something like this and have the knowledge to be able to get into this. So from a risk, go back to your question about,
because it can sound like you're a high risk taker first, because someone who's watching this be like, oh, he definitely has a plan, A, B, C, D. I don't want to risk all that money. So that's what I'm picking up just hearing your conversation, from hearing your perspective.
Yeah. So as far as the risk goes, I chose to diversify in this because of my long-term vision for my life.
Yeah.
And so you start to make different choices about your behaviors and the things that you do on a day-to-day basis based on where you want to be in 5 or 10 years. So my eventual goal is to be able to have time freedom against what I am working on a daily basis. So right now, I have grown my personal career path, from an entry-level worker to, now in management and helping lead. But time is now my driver. So how do I get more time and bandwidth back in my life? And so as I start to evaluate what are the things that I can do with the wealth that I've built to help drive me to that success story, this is one of those levers that I can pull to help diversify what I've got to help eventually live off of, the returns of my own wealth.
No, that makes so much sense. And that's the thing is, like, even when I'm talking to new investors, it's more than just I need money or I would love to take your money, right? It's also trying to understand if that private money lender / private investor, what are their end goals? Like, why would you want to do this? Because sometimes the person who you're thinking of giving the money to, it may not be a good fit because you guys' goals, they don't align, right? And another thing that you mentioned is that you knew that if you lost that money, you'll be okay. Like, you would be, and a lot of people, I ask investors, like, hey, if you lend this money and you lose it tomorrow, because there's a 1% chance that you may lose this, will you be okay? Can you pay your bills? Can you take care of your family? And if they're like, no, I'm like, don't do it. Do not do it, because you're going to make my life a living hell, or that person you're lending the money to a living hell.
Yeah. And now that, we've done one, right, we've scaled from there.
Yeah.
However, now I'm spreading my risk across multiple investment opportunities. So one of the other things that I had in my mind when I was talking about, how you get financial capital for projects that you may want to do, you go to these large firms.
Yeah.
And so you look at these huge investors that are doing, their multifamily units or, big property development, 30, $40 million type projects. And you think that, and there's a barrier to entry at that level. However, what you're doing here and what we're involved with, is helping people just like ourselves that are trying to have their vision for financial freedom in the future and trying to build their own wealth and portfolios, that we can sponsor and walk alongside them, meet them where they're at. And it's a lot less barrier to entry when it comes to a total dollar amount perspective.
Yeah, because everyone is doing the same thing. It's just like the level that you're at, but we all have this, we want to get here, but you can't just get here overnight. You got to start here and start building until you get there. So I agree with you. So I'm grateful I'm able to help other people to do that, because I got into the space and I was like, wait, this is a whole thing. Like, why is no one talking about this? But again, my mindset was scam, fraud. This is not real. No, no, no. So you mentioned that. Well, I know this, but we've done quite a few deals together. Let's talk about those deals that we've done. What has that experience like, from moving from deal number 1 to deal number 5? And what are some precautions that you take to manage your risk right now with those deals?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest thing, if I'm talking to a borrower,
Hmm.
um, that you want to make sure that you've got a clear exit plan and a clear way to pay off those funds.
Yeah.
And nothing will instill more confidence in the lender than your ability to say, hey, I've got control over my project and my portfolio. I've got an exit plan.
Hmm.
And it's okay if things slip, right? There's contingencies in there for dates and timelines. But I think the most nervous thing is not only if I'm going to get my money back, but when am I going to get my
When?
money? You know, and of course there's some profit on top of that, but for me, it's more about I want to make sure that even if I had to break even, I just get back what I put into it, from a risk perspective. And so having that exit plan is really important to me, just to know that we're going to get that back.
Yeah. No, that's super crucial. It's like, whenever you are thinking of investing, I always tell persons, even those who are looking to borrow money, it's like, don't worry about the paperwork. Like, we get lost in the contracts and all that stuff. I was like, you have anything that you're investing in, does, whether it's real estate, whether it's business, whether it's buying a car, whatever it is, you have to be clear on, and talking from the perspective of, if you are the one with the capital, what do you need my money for? How long do you need my money? And when am I getting it back? And what are the risks involved? If you understand those four things and you are comfortable with it and you want to proceed, then you start asking questions. What are the worst case scenarios? If this happened, can we put a plan B in place? So it's like a if then, if then, if then. And that's where now you put everything in writing and you go to an attorney to do all your contracts and all of those things. Now, with all those deals that you've done, I want to be super real. Was there any deal where you're like, oh my God, am I going to get my money back? The due date is passed and you're freaking out.
Not freak out is not the right word. I have not freaked out yet. So I'm sure there will be a deal that we do where I really get freaked out. But constant communication is key.
Mm-hmm.
And so and before I get to that, it's the second most important part of this is trust.
Yeah.
And so once I saw how Kalisha manages the risk from her side to the
Mhm.
lender, and then communicates back to me, I
Yeah.
know that I've got full transparency from end to end. And that's just goes back to the communication point. So if Kalisha comes to me and says, hey, I have this deal and I'm looking for X, and it hits all the risk tolerance pieces, just from a sanity check from my perspective. I have Kalisha's weight on that this is a good deal versus my risk tolerance is a lower of a weighting if I would invest in this opportunity. I
Mhm.
know another way to say that is I trust Kalisha's judgment more than I trust my risk tolerance at this point,
Mm.
because of how many we've done together. We've established a line of trust with that.
Yeah.
So the communication aspect, I haven't freaked out, but there's a couple deals even now that are past due, and it's like, okay, well, there's a path to get out of that. It's just a timing.
Yeah.
Now it gets a little bit more complex when you start talking about the investors and their timeline and refi processes and other external factors that you don't have control over, or Kalisha doesn't have control over, or even the borrower themselves don't have control over. And so there's a level of grace that we need to provide with that.
Mhm.
We know that there's that timing risk. That's just one of those factors, but it's not a matter of if I'm going to get my money back. It's just when.
When, yes. And I love that you mentioned that. And that's something I appreciate with you, is like, and I have a few investors who are like this as well, who they understand the timeline that's in the contract. The date is a date, but as you said, there are certain things that we just cannot control. And depending on what the borrower's plan was to repay you. So, for example, if a borrower's plan is to refi the property, now you're working with a third party. That's a more institutional lender like a big banks. We have to follow their process and their timeline. We have to work with them. And I also like the fact that, as you said, with the grace period, it's rare. It is very rare. And we are in a time now within the real estate space where things are really weird
Mhm.
across the board. Every investor from different levels, even lenders at different levels, are feeling things. But I think it just comes down to, whenever this thing is happening, is the borrower needs to communicate and be completely transparent as to what is happening. That way you set expectations as well. And also that private investor with the capital, yes, you're nervous, but also try to understand what is happening and be like, okay, how can I work with you so we all come out of this a win-win situation? Because you go through this trial and error with this person, sometimes it's good. I've had lenders who, you go through a bad time with an investor and you're like, you know what, I want to reinvest with this borrower, because even though it was tough, they communicated, they let me know what was happening, rather than I'm like, I don't want to work with this person, let me go find a new person. And
Yeah.
then now you start the process from scratch.
And that's something really important that you just touched there. It's the feedback loop of learning. And
Hmm.
so there was the risk and the knowledge that I had to trust you with that first investment.
Yeah.
And now I have that trust, so I'm willing to do more investment. But now we need the feedback loop on, hey, once we get into these situations, you have to know that I don't need to know the answer. Like, this situation occurs and I don't have to go figure out what to do,
Mhm.
because you've seen a lot of these situations I was before. Now, I'm sure even in your tenured experience here, you're learning new things and new situations are approaching all the time.
Yeah.
But you've already learned, you're ahead of that learning curve by like 80% from me, right? So
Hmm.
you're learning the 20% new, but you already know the 80%, where I have to learn it all from scratch. But I
Yeah.
don't have to do that with you, because I know that you're like, oh yeah, I saw this in another deal, and this is how we're going to handle this.
Yeah.
And so here's how it worked out. So you've got a case story and a success story for every problem that you may encounter, even after the money's already sent.
And that's that. I think that is a scary part with you, with us in the, with me in this space. It's like, oh my God, it's always, you want to get the investor money back and you're going to do all the things to mitigate the risk and all that stuff. But it's always, there's always a one thing that caused that delay. And it's very humans and our tendencies to freak out, but it's always good to go straight back into solution mode, to be like, okay, what's the next step? What can we do now? And I like to be very transparent. Like, I don't care how bad the news is. I'm telling you, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because I think from my experience, that has just worked out way better. The most the investor is going to do is going to get angry, but then during that conversation they're going to cool down, and then they're going to be like, okay, so what's the solution? I was like, all right, you let it out, yeah, here's the solution. And they're like, okay, let's work with that. Because some, it's natural for you to freak out because your money is going to be delayed. You're expecting it a certain time and it doesn't come in. That's natural. Like, that's completely normal. you know what would you say, like, some of the benefits that you have gained from being a private investor for real estate? Because I know you do different types of investment, but what would you say is the top benefit from doing it?
I would say the level is as much control as you have over working with your money in this type of arrangement.
Yeah.
You still don't have a lot of hours invested in tracking this. Now, I'm kind of I'm a self-proclaimed nerd, as Kalisha knows, and I've got spreadsheets for everything, and so I like to track this. It's fun for me, right? This is a fun activity. It's, there's an end goal to this, and I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't growing my personal wealth. But at
Hmm.
the same point, this is a very enjoyable activity to sit down in my after hours or before I go to bed, or early in the mornings on the weekends before the family's up, and just say, hey, here's where I stand, here's where I've grown. And it's important to measure your progress as you move along, because you can't show growth if you don't know where you started. And so
Ooh.
know where you start, know
Yeah.
what your goal is, and then it's fun to make sure you're tracking along to your goals and your personal progress, just
No,
like anything else you would
that's
invest in
just
life.
anything else. So even with that, like, how would you compare the returns? Because I know you dabble in so many different things, but invested in stocks and have your 401k and also in real estate, what would you say are some of the benefits of doing the different investment, and which one have you really good returns?
Of course, the disclaimer is I'm no financial expert, right? And not qualified to give
Got
financial investing advice. However, and it depends for everyone, right? And
Mhm.
it really depends on, again, your risk tolerance. You can put, items in the market, right? You can buy stocks, you can buy bonds, you can buy all of these kind of things. Stocks have a tendency to fluctuate. We
Yeah.
went through a really hard time during the housing crisis. We went through another hard time during COVID. But in general, we're 7, 8%, on average over the length of your stocks.
Yeah.
But your money's tied up for an extended amount of time in that. So how liquid do you want your assets?
Could be.
Yeah, we're tied up in 6 to 9 to 12 month deals here with private equity lending, but that's a short term investment
Mhm.
for a very lucrative gain over those percentages I was mentioning from the market. So if you're looking for me, I'm still young enough, and healthy enough, Lord willing, to continue this for a while, that I don't need monstrous gains, but I also have enough life left in me to make that money back if I were to lose it. So if
Yeah.
I look at that from a risk tolerance perspective, that it's like, hey, if some of these deals were to go sideways and I only get half or maybe none of that investment back, it's not, back to the earlier point, it's not going to bankrupt me, but I also have enough health left that I could just double down in corporate work and make some money back there.
Yeah.
But never the goal, right? And so with that lucrative mindset thinking is that money works on compounding interest,
Yeah.
right? And wealth works on compounding interest, right? So if you're making X between now and 6 months from now, and you get that return back and you invest that amount plus the interest that you've made, now you're making interest on your interest.
Yeah.
And so if you do that enough times and you can track this out, you show a bell curve. It's going to ramp up very quickly. And so, everyone has that target number. You think about that scratch off lottery ticket that you get at the grocery store, the lottery that you go in with your pool,
Yeah.
of coworkers. And you think, man, if we hit this, my cut's going to be $5 million after taxes. And that's
Mhm.
all I need to live for the rest of my life. Well, we all should know what our number is. And it doesn't mean you have to stop working. It doesn't mean that you stop growing your wealth or, you take care of others. But at the same point, you know that you're secure for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
So I encourage everyone watching to know what their number is
Yeah.
and have a goal to hit it, whether it be 5 years, 10 years, or by the time you retire. You need to get to your number. And so the faster we can get to that number, the faster you get to, enjoy the luxuries of time.
The time. It's so crazy because one thing I like about you and just talking to different investors, most of my investors are completely new. Some persons are doing way bigger things than you are. It's what I like is that as you said, your number. And as much as your plan is not perfect, you're like, in order for me to get to this number, this is what I have to do. This is how much I have to grow my money each time. It's like you have a plan. And for a lot of us, for a lot of people that I've spoken to, they have this amount of money and they're like, I just want to here invest. But what is your end game?
Yeah. My
Because
end game,
end
yeah.
game is to grow.
You can look at it 2 or 3 different ways, right? So I'm going to give you the 2 or 3 different scenarios here. So one is obviously time is my number one goal right now.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get to a number that would sustain my current lifestyle, at a bare minimum, on a yearly income basis, right?
Mhm.
As soon as I can hit that number to make all things equal, then it's like, do I quit my corporate job? Do I, start to see part-time opportunities? Do I do other things to alleviate
Yeah.
my freedom and my time?
Mhm.
The second mode of person is saying, I want to be able to grow on X percentage year over year, right? Even if you throw out that number and say, hey, I would never stop working, right? I still want to work 40 hours a week. I would drive my significant other crazy if I ever, went part-time. I would have too much time. I would end up spending more money because I've got more free time. So there's those of you that are going to want to continue to work full time and
Yeah.
build things with your life as an output. And that is okay. Well, if I'm making X and I can continue to make X, how much over X do I want to achieve, and by how far, right?
Mhm.
Whether it be by percentage or a dollar amount.
Yeah. You got to have a plan. That's
Yep,
the thing.
absolutely.
You have to have a plan because that's how you will really know if this is working or not. What advice, like, and go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I do have one third one, right?
I
There's
know.
those viewers out there that are a little, let's just say, more wise than I am in years,
Yeah.
that are either approaching the end of their working career or have got to the end, right?
Mm.
And so there's one of two groups that I see there is, hey, I just want to have a great life, in my elder years. I want to travel, I want to see my grandkids, I want to, just be able to enjoy all of those years that I worked, but still have financial freedom, right?
Mhm.
And either whether you're already on target, you've already hit your number, or whether that you still got a delta between where you thought you'd be and where you actually end up, if you can afford to even do a little bit, right, of these things and trust that risk tolerance, right? You want to preserve your risk at that point, right? 100%,
Yeah.
but there's still an opportunity to continue to grow your wealth for future generations as well.
Mhm. Oh man, like that is I can keep saying giving those tips and advice to people, but I think it's always good to hear again a different perspective because these are messages that person within the real estate space communicate over and over. But there are also persons who fit the box that you just described, but because there's so much noise, it's like I don't know who to trust, right? Everyone just want my money, and because a lot of people they would love to get there, but it's like again I don't know who to trust. But I think it's just find that one or two person that you feel like you vibe with or you connect with, and also you play a role of educating yourself. How can I better understand this, the risk involved, so that way now I can now make a list of questions that I need to ask another expert, and from there put do trial and error. I know being in ready for retirement, you don't want trial and error, but talk to someone who has been through it, who have lost money, who've gone through it, to be like, hey, if I don't want to make those same mistakes, I don't want this to happen, what are some things that I can put in place? But I would recommend to put a list of questions. But before I even continue to give those recommendations, Brad, like what advice would you give to someone who is on the fence about doing this investing thing, or maybe they've never thought about doing it before?
Yeah, I would just suggest, just to, as Kalisha said, learn as much as you can and find that person that you can trust.
Mhm.
Uh, find out, set a budget just like you would with anything. So view this as you have your own entertainment budget. You go out to a movie on the weekends and have dinner, right? That's a that's a cost to you, but the return of enjoyment out of that cost was worth something.
Yeah.
So you have to set within your personal wealth, what percentage would I like to set aside to receive the benefit of whatever it is I'm investing in.
Mhm.
So, you go to the store and you buy $100 pair of jeans or you buy a $300 pair of jeans, right? There's some people would say I would never spend $300 on a pair of jeans,
Yeah.
and it's all relative to what it's worth for you.
Mhm.
And so, at this point in my investing, so we can fast forward a little bit now. After I did that first deal, the second deal, the third deal, then it was like I'm all in on this because I view the risk tolerance as worth it. So there's other portfolio investment things that you can take advantage of. You can do an SB lock against your stocks, right, which is a lower percentage loan, against your own stocks, where you still participate in the growth of your portfolio without having to sell them.
Yeah.
Or there's even HELOCs, right? If you've got a very low interest rate, if you bought your home over COVID and you've got high equity in your home, you can borrow against that equity in your home to invest in this. And so it's just a numbers game, and that might sound really really risky. Any
They
any
have.
Dave Ramsey or any of those guys out there would totally advise against that. But if you're a smart investor and you're thinking about what the returns are, what the risk is, and what the spread is between the interest that you're paying and the money that you're making, uh,
Yeah.
you know, there's money to be had there based on leveraging your wealth and your assets.
Oh, that was so good. And I love that the fact that you mentioned all the different sources that people could pull their capital from. Like you actually just answered one of my next questions because I was gonna ask you, how do you feel now, like looking back, like how do you feel now about
Now,
investing in private credit?
now I'm like, like I mentioned in the beginning, anything that I do, I go 100%.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I don't go 100% right at first, right? Because that's a risk, right? So you have
Mhm.
to balance that risk tolerance. I am pretty bit risk adverse. So
Yeah.
it's like, all right, I set, like I've used that example for going out to the movies and dinner, right? You have a $150 budget, whatever it is for the evening that you're going to go do that. Well, I had this, couple $1,000s, or if whatever the deal size was at the beginning, say, okay, I'm going to set this aside, and the enjoyment or benefit I will get out of this from a return,
Yeah.
I'm willing to put that money up. And so we did that first one, right? Okay. We did the second one. Okay. And now it's, if I'm going to go all in, why would I stop at just that deal or the second deal when I should use all of my assets that I am willing to put forth to get to that same type of reward? So
Mm-hmm.
now those two that I mentioned, I have an SB lock, I have an H lock, at various amounts, and we've put that in there, and it's like it's money that I've technically borrowed against myself to invest, but that return that I'm going to get will get me to my goal that much faster, knowing my age and my health and my
Yeah.
other circumstances, and the trust of my wife.
Because you need that. You
Absolutely.
need that. No, I'm so grateful that you took the time to just come and share your experience, and especially like just from your perspective, what is it that you've gone through in working with me? Just not even just working with me, but investing in private credit, right? And for those who are like, Alicia, what are you talking about private credit? Everything that we just did, we consider that private money lending, private credit. You are basically acting as a bank for real estate investors. And I try not to use those terms because I want you to fully understand the discussion, right? Because sometimes we tend to use all these real estate jargons and you get so confused or overwhelmed. But the entire conversation is just showing you guys how, if you have the capital and you have a goal, how can you use that to grow your money by investing in real estate? Again, we were never giving you guys financial advice, no, nothing like that. We were just sharing our opinions and our experience. So, Brad, thank you so much for coming in and talk about your experience. Any last words before I wrap up?
One of the intangible benefits of this is I've hinted to it a couple times through the talk, but it's helping others, right? And so, as a good person in society, we should want to help other people. And so not only are you doing this for your own financial gain, right? You're putting your assets and your capital on the line for potential loss, right? If things don't go well, but you're also investing in someone else's life and their dream and their vision too. So, those that have and those that give, I feel are blessed through, in abundance.
Yeah.
And so, view that as a motivator for you to help someone else, will help you as well.
Okay, no, I love that. But thank you guys so much for watching. So if you've ever thought about private lending, or maybe you weren't sure how it works, is it safe, or is this really for you? I hope this conversation gave you some clarity, because the truth is, right? The truth is, everyday people are becoming private money lenders or investors, whatever you want to call it, earning strong, consistent returns while helping other investors bring their projects to life, similar to what Brad just said. So if you'd like to learn more or on how it works, or see if this could be a good fit for you, there is a link in the description. If you, or just you just want to have a quick conversation, you want to ask questions, I have tons of resources that you guys can check out. So also don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next interview or the next educational tip about raising private money. So thank you again, Brad, and I hope you guys have a good one.